This is Kelly.
And this is Amy.
And you're listening to Diary of a Death Investigator. Amy's still sick, but she made it through the last one, so we know she'll make it through this one.
I will survive. Got the eye of the tiger.
We do have a trigger warning. This story contains content about suicide. If you or someone you know is in crisis, help is just 3 numbers away. 988 is the suicide and crisis hotline, available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week across the United States. And if you're listening in another country or have a number we can share, please email us at kelly@diaryofadeathinvestigator.com. We are calling this episode Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. I'm pretty excited about this. I know you are too.
It's an interesting one, I will say.
We love the interesting stories. Although your last one was pretty interesting. Short and sweet, but still interesting.
Well, I think there was no question there of what actually happened, but I'm like, if we really did turn into ghosts like where we died, I don't think I'd want to live the rest of my ghostly eternal life there. You know what I mean?
I mean, that just means I want to go at Disneyland.
Yeah.
That's a lot of free reign. Let me go. The smells, everyone's usually happy. Although I have been, someone told my sister-in-law once, ma'am, you do know this is the happiest place on earth, right? As she's like grabbing one of the kids to go do something. Like, yeah, I can try a person's patience.
Well, there's a lot of kids there, so I don't know.
Yeah, I understand. I don't have kids.
Everyone needs a nap sometimes.
Oh, I need one all the time. I needed one, I'm sure, as a kid every day, and I still need one every day. It's just that's why adulting is so hard, because we don't get those opportunities every day now. All right, Amy, tell us all about this gentleman.
I get this call. It's around 11 in the morning. It's September, and this gentleman was found at around 10:30 in the morning. And this guy is a doctor, and he is actually a pretty young doctor. He's in his later 30s, and he works as a general doctor at a hospital. And this guy's been struggling with some things in his own life for a while. However, from the outside looking in, he looks like he's kind of got it all. He's got a family with a wife, couple of kids, nice house. You would think doctor, and he's a fairly attractive guy. So, looks like everything's going great, but home life, not so great. Apparently, he struggles with some alcohol abuse.
Oh.
Yeah, that leads to some problems in their marriage. So apparently he tries to go to rehab because of this. Then a year prior to his death, his father also dies. And so I guess that then triggers, the alcohol use again. And so I think that he's just really struggling at this point in his life. The wife is just kind of like, hey, I've had enough of all this stuff. And she's to the point where she's just like, I'm going to take the kids and we're going to go stay with my mom. And I guess that, he had been trying to do therapy, and he's been taking some antidepressants. Of course, I'm getting all this information from the officer that's there. And something that kind of bothers me with this is that there's only one officer. And when I'm hearing all this stuff, usually when you have something that kind of immediately sounds like a suicidal situation, you would think that they would send a lieutenant and a detective as well, and there isn't. And so that seemed a little problematic to me as well.
Why? Why did you think that was problematic?
Because there's always going to be someone who disagrees with you about the way that their loved one dies. And so it just reaffirms the situation when you have someone with a little bit higher power there, when you have a lieutenant and a detective, because they're going to be interviewing people on scene, and then they're also going to be doing a little bit further research into his past as well. They can get more information than really what I can. They have a little more power to do some asking around at his work. So he was getting these prescriptions. Like, he can't write his own prescriptions, but his friend at work was writing him prescriptions for antidepressants. And so, which you would think also could be problematic as well, because you can basically get scripts for prescriptions for basically whatever you want from that person. Like, hey, you're my friend. You can write me scripts for whatever I want. So I thought that was also kind of an issue.
But to counter that, because I feel like, I mean, I know some doctors, and I think the opposite of that would be like, hey, I don't want to write you a prescription because I don't want it to become a problem, or I don't, what's your real problem? Or, I'm not sure that we should be going down this avenue. Maybe we need to try something else. So I always feel like that could be an option too.
Oh, I
where they're
agree
like,
with
no,
that.
we don't want to. Yeah.
But this person was writing him scripts. And so, she didn't want to answer questions either.
Oh,
which I'll get to later. So usually when you go to like maybe a separate hospital to seek out a physician, it just kind of keeps it neat. When it's a physician that you work with, it can be kind of messy, because then it's called into question, like, you were so close to this person, and why were you filling these scripts for them? And did you know that they were struggling with these things? I mean, you're kind of in that position where you could lose your own license. And so for that kind of thing, him asking this person, I don't know, it kind of put them in a bad position as well. So kind of made it a little messy. So anyways, yeah, he's struggling with all these things. His dad had died a year prior, so he was also struggling with that. So he starts drinking again. He's very depressed. He's taking these prescriptions. And so mixing these prescriptions with alcohol, like, is not good. And the night before, we know that the wife had left and taken the kids. And when I had arrived, the decedent's mom was there, and then the wife was also there at the time. And I didn't want to ask the wife too much, because the officer had already talked to her a little bit, and she did confirm that she said when she was actually leaving with the kids, he had stated he will just kill himself. So I was like, okay, I can always talk to you again later when a little time has passed, so that, you can kind of gather yourself and your thoughts. The officer did say that when he arrived to the home, because he got the call because the wife had found him. She was concerned he wasn't answering his phone. She had called to check on him. And so she had actually shown up to the house to check on him. And when she got there, she said the home was locked up. Everything seemed secured. And the mom had also shown up as well, because she was also concerned. And when the mom got there, the mom was actually the one that had found him. And she had found him in his bathroom, underwater in the bathtub. He was a really big person, just really tall. So, like, she couldn't get him out of the bathtub. And so she called 911. And so when they got there, they had let out the water out of the bathtub.
Oh, she didn't even let the water out of the bathtub?
I think she was just so freaked out because the water was so tall. It was a really deep bathtub. I don't know if she could reach like underneath him or like even move him, because he was kind of curled up into like a fetal position. And so like she couldn't like reach underneath him or move him to like get down to like the plug.
But he had already passed at that point, so it wouldn't have done probably anything.
Yeah, it was too far at that point to even do anything. So they had pulled the plug in the tub to like drain the water. So when I get there, I'd already talked to the wife. I hadn't talked to the mom yet, but mom was like trying to watch everything that I was doing. I told the officer, like, keep her in the kitchen. And the phone was on the bed. And I had taken pictures of his phone, like through text messages. And he had like texted, I think, the wife, and was talking about like how depressed he was. He had texted another friend because the friend was asking how he was doing. Like, he was saying he wasn't doing well. And I think the mom was texting him and saying, like, we're going to get through this together. Like, please don't do anything dumb. And I went into the bathroom finally to like take a look at him. And along the side of the bathtub, I mean, he had like multiple wine bottles, beer bottles, and he had empty pill bottles next to the side of the tub as well. And so I'm like, oh, well, that's not good. Like taking all these things that are going to make him pass out in the bathtub. So that was full of water. And I tried to ask them how full the bathtub was, which you could see along the side of the tub. Like you could see a ring from like where the water had been up, like where the foam of like dirty water had been.
Well, did he throw up? Because that's a lot of alcohol.
So he had a high tolerance for alcohol since he was an alcoholic. So what was lining the bathtub rim was actually purged from his stomach because of decomposition. So what you were seeing along the rim of the bathtub was actually the foam rim where the water height was. So what you could see along the top of the bathtub, he had aligned along the top, was, of course, all of his alcohol and his pill bottles that were empty. And like I said, he was really like a really big person. So he was very difficult to get out. And it was a huge bathtub. It was really deep. He must have been, I think, like 6'3" or 6'4". And he was like completely like covered in the bathtub. Like his head didn't poke out of the top. So like it cracks me up like when you see those like documentaries or like you listen to like podcasts or anything about people that talk about, yeah, I tried so hard to save my wife when I found her in the bathtub completely submerged, but I just couldn't get her out. And they're like completely dry. And I'm like, there's no way, because like you have to struggle so hard to try to get someone out of the bathtub. Like this guy, it was really hard to get him out of the bathtub.
Well, was he wearing clothes? Because that would weigh him down too.
No, he was completely naked. Gosh, I think it took 3 of us to get him out of the bathtub. And so really what you have to do is you have to get towels to basically tie around the wrists and around the ankles so you can get some leverage to lift and basically slide him up and over. Like it wouldn't even matter to try to get like the body bag under him. I don't even think we could barely even fit him into a body bag because his head like barely even fit into like the top of the body bag, like head to toe. He was so tall. So we had to like stand on top. Like I had to put my feet on both sides of the bathtub, like on the top. And I had to pull up like with I had a towel in my left and right hand. So basically lifting up on both of his wrists. And I'm trying to like get his top half out of the bathtub. And then we're doing the same thing down on the other end of his body. I mean, he's just so tall. It was so hard to get him out of that bathtub. That's like the one thing I remember. So once we get him out of the bathtub, of course, then all this purge is coming out of his mouth. So, of course, people think that's also blood coming out of their mouth. It's not blood, it's purge because it's really dark. And then I noticed once we get him out of the bathtub, there's this huge butcher knife in the bottom of the bathtub. And I'm like, what the heck is this? So I'm like, well, great. So now that adds another element of surprise to...
I mean, was the water like red, but you just assumed it was from purge and wine?
Yeah, I was like, okay, well, now I have to like look him, which I was going to do anyways, but I was like, now I have to look for like a stab wound or something. Because of course, I've had cases where people have stabbed themselves to death, which we've talked about before, or people trying to slit their wrist or something like that. So I'm like carefully looking him over. And then I start seeing like these little tiny like blood droplets kind of running off his neck. I'm like, that's kind of weird. So I kind of like lift his chin and like reflect his neck back. And I can see that he has what we call like very superficial hesitation marks on his neck where he had like kind of taken the knife and just kind of ran it across his neck like multiple times. So just deep enough where it would just bring blood to the surface, but not deep enough to basically cause any real trauma.
Not like the Mimi's Cafe episode we did. There was hesitation in his cut.
Yeah, not to that extent, but that was, I think, what kind of the intent was. And it could have been maybe he was like trying to get some courage with like the pills and alcohol, and maybe he was just too inebriated with the alcohol and drugs that he was just like didn't have enough to like do it. At that point, he might have just passed out and then like basically gone beneath the surface. So it could have been that he just went beneath the surface finally and just couldn't do it. So he could have just, gone unconscious at that point. So I didn't see any other marks from knives all over his body at that point. Everything checked out. So I was like, okay, that's good. Didn't see any other knife marks. Because then at that point, I'm like, oh gosh, like, let's get homicide here. And that's going to extend my whole scene time at this point. It's like, all right, I think I feel comfortable with us, like, being done here with him at the scene. And, like, let's go ahead and get him transported. We get him loaded up. And then I decide, like, let's go ahead and talk to the mom. So I'm getting ready to walk out of the garage. And the mom pulls me aside. And the mom looks at me because I tell her what I found in the bathtub. And I had asked her, I said, did you notice a knife in there when you found him? And she was like, no, he would never do that. And I was like, I was just wondering, what you had seen, because I hadn't talked to her yet. And I said, I'm so sorry. Please let me know if there's anything that we can do for you. And then she grabbed me before I could walk away. And she said, it'd be a real shame if you decided that he killed himself. What would his kids think of him? And I honestly didn't have anything to say at this point because I was just kind of like, is she threatening me? So
yeah.
I was like, okay. So I left at this point.
But she was pretty upset though too, right? Like, because she was...
Yes, and I totally get that because I'm like, I've dealt with so many grieving families, but I'm like, I have pictures of text messages that you have with him about basically like you telling him not to do something to himself. So, I mean, I get that. And a lot of people kind of reject that theory that their kids could do that to themselves. And yeah, that's hard to accept.
But let me ask you this. If you had said that, like, what would the alternative be? Like, if he didn't kill himself,
it'd be an accident.
Oh.
I mean, like a lot of times it can nullify a insurance claim, right?
Oh.
For death. So, yeah, when you think about, like, he's a doctor, he probably has really good insurance, like life insurance policy. So that's one thing to consider as well. And I know that makes it really hard for doctors when they are considering what the manner of death is as well. So I know that they consider all of these things together when they are trying to decide those things. So I know that they had put on their cause of death, I believe it was drowning. And I'm pretty sure they put accident on his manner of death.
Well, because, I mean, if he did drink and even though he was attempting to do it, you did see that he hesitated, right? Like, he didn't go all the way through, and he was a doctor, so you would think he'd be able to if he wanted to. I mean, saying it and then doing it, I guess, are completely different things, right? So if he, like, just drank himself to death or passed out, that's an accident. But you did say that they did talk to his doctor friend.
Yeah, I tried to reach out to her and talk to her about like prescriptions and stuff. And she was ignoring my phone calls. When I would get a hold of her, she goes, "Oh, well, I'll have to talk to you later. I'm busy right now." So she kept avoiding me. And so I had a friend investigator who was my partner at the time. And he was like, well, you know what I'm going to do? So I heard him put the phone on speaker, and I kept trying to ask for medical records because we can get his medical records at this point. And so we kept trying to get the medical records, and so we'd fax her medical records, and they wouldn't send his medical records in. And I did this like maybe 5 times. And so finally he calls her and he says, "We have sent this request in this many times, and you still have only sent us maybe his face sheet," which the face sheet literally is just like their name, their date of birth, and like their medications or something that they're taking, instead of like their doctor visit like summary with like their actual notes on it. And he said, "So this is what I can do. If you don't send me his medical records, I can show up to your office with state troopers. That is what the law says I can do. And you can be arrested with not complying with the law. So you can decide what you want to do." And she goes, "I'll have my nurses send that over today." And he goes, "That's what I thought," and hung up.
And did she?
Yep, we got it that day.
Did it show that she's been writing prescriptions for him for a long time?
Yeah, because he was depressed and had gone to therapy and was an alcoholic. And so.
Yeah. Ugh, that's rough. I feel sorry for the wife.
Oh, yeah, it was so sad because like they had little kids and yeah, poopy.
But it sounds like he wasn't, I don't want to say going to get better, but, you know, especially with alcohol, it's such a sneaky drug. And I say that knowing just, you know, like I said, being in the booze business, it's like we always tell people, you know, drink responsibly. And it's just that mixed in with everything else. Like it just, you know, it's not an upper, it's a downer.
Yep.
So it wasn't going to help him at all. But, man. Well, I wonder what happened to the mom. I wonder.
Yeah, because then she had lost her husband and her son.
Yeah.
So hopefully she got to spend a lot of time with her grandkids, though. So.
Did the mom live in the area, the same area as the...
Oh, yeah, she was close. Yeah.
I wonder why she didn't like come and see him beforehand. I wonder why she just didn't stay with him.
I don't know. She probably asked herself that question too, honestly.
I mean, I feel like we said that before at one of the other episodes. I think it was Knives Out.
The guy that stabbed himself. Yeah.
Yeah. And the dad who like left and then said he shouldn't have left. So I guess you just never know, but it's always that like sixth sense, I think. What a fun story, Amy. Thank you.
Yeah, well, you know, I do what I can. I bring the fun.
If you guys have any questions for Amy, you can email us at kelly@diaryofadeathinvestigator.com, or you can message us on our Instagram page, Diary of a Death Investigator. If there's any cases you guys would be interested in hearing, sometimes I like throw stuff out at Amy and she goes, "Oh yeah, I have a case for that. Oh yeah, I have a case for that."
Yay.
Yay, lots of cases. I don't know. Yeah, maybe have a job for Amy. Like maybe she should get back into this whole mix of things. I don't know. Forensic file Amy.
I know, right? Yeah.
But until next time, guys, thanks for listening.
Bye.